Yep.
Okay, no, Dave's gotta get back in. He's got like 30 seconds. I think he's just talking.
Yeah, I've learned up there too. You always want to ask how much stuff it is before you just write it down.
Yeah.
Dozen leeches,
Oh.
10 bucks.
I could hear you talking.
Bingo. Thank you, Mark.
Is it working now? Okay, cool.
Good. So
I'll
whatever.
have to call the company to come in here. I think their PDU went,
Oh, okay.
so.
Yeah, you got that done with 30 seconds to spare.
Good work.
He timed it out that way.
At the end of when the meeting ends, I need to talk to you about a tour at the dental place. Don't let me forget that, Jeff, so we can get back to that lady. Are we up?
Not quite.
Now we are.
Can you see the video? Okay.
All right, let's rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I will call the meeting to order. Mark, do you want to come up, please?
Certainly. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Appreciate the opportunity to kind of come and talk about the corrections in Minnesota. Did everybody have a chance to review the packet, or do you want me to kind of outline a few things in here?
Well, I have a couple questions as
Perfect.
just, okay, so the second page, the correction delivery system in Minnesota?
Yep.
Will you just cover, as you do your presentation, of why different counties, you know, if you look around, even in population, why different counties chose whatever?
I can give you my opinion on why I think different counties
Yeah.
chose whatever. So there's 3 different delivery systems are kind of outlined on here. The county probation office supervises only misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, and juvenile cases. So wherever there's a county probation office, there also has to be a DOC office to supervise the felony cases and the guys on supervised release coming out of prison. So as you look at the graph, you'll see it's DOC, CPO, or straight DOC, or County Corrections Act. So
And then for the public, can you just say what Hubbard is under?
Hubbard County is under the Department of Corrections, and a Department of Corrections contract office is what it's considered. The third option is the Community Corrections Act. As you can see, looking at the map, mainly the larger counties in Minnesota choose to go Community Corrections Act. That gives the county no, I don't want to say no oversight, but they don't have to interact with the Department of Corrections. So the county is completely in charge of their entire probation system. They take care of, and it's, I don't want to say it's 100%, but typically they take care of the felony supervision, the people coming out of prison, misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, juvenile cases. Does that kind of make sense? With the funding system changes that are happening right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. The nice thing for all the counties last year is the state finally approved the 50% reimbursement rate. Prior to that, we were getting around 26, 27%. So across the board, that helped all the delivery systems. CCA probably benefited the most because a lot of these counties, Crow Wing, for example, 2 years ago, their levy was almost $1.2 million to fund their probation system. Their whole probation system costs about $2.4 million. So when they got 50% of that back last year, they got $1.2 million back. So that was a huge increase. The county board grabbed some of that money and put it back into their general levy.
So if you don't have to work with the Department of Corrections, does that give the county more options, or why do they opt to do that?
I think it's just it's a personal choice that the county feels more in control possibly of what's happening in their probation delivery system. I've shared this with several of you before, that my opinion is the county, your local county commissioner and your judges have control of what's happening kind of in Hubbard County right now. for example, if one of my agents were to make a report saying, you know, we want this person to go to prison, the county attorney can say, we don't want this person to go to prison. The judge can say, we don't want this person to go to prison. So everything's litigated out in the court system. We can recommend 90 days. They can say, no, we only want them to do 30 days. So the local control thing, I think that kind of gets hyped. In my opinion, the local control is your county attorney and your judges are, for better, lack of better terms, keeping us in check with what they feel the county wants. Hopefully that kind of makes sense.
So then the CCA counties, the counties themselves are kind of determining these outcomes?
They have the same process. I mean, the county attorney and the judges still are responsible for oversight of the recommendations. I don't know if there's in my mind, I don't know that there's an advantage to one system over the other. So an example, like we've been talking about doing a specialty court here in Hubbard County. Possibly in the CCA system, you might have a little more influence over the judges. I don't know that for sure. I mean, a judge still can say, you know, we don't have the capacity to do it or the ability to do it, and the county really can't force that program on them. So.
Probably one of those things too, where we've always done it this way.
Yeah, I think there's some of that, and I think now, you know, I'll talk a lot about the funding changes that are the great unknown, is people are going to start looking at, you know, is a CPO DOC combination most cost effective for the county, or is there a better option? You know, if we're actually getting reimbursed at the full 50%, does it make sense to look at a different model of corrections? So I think it's pretty much what, you know, you guys as a county board is happy with and feels like is best serving the needs of the county.
So do other states have this 3 option, or is this Minnesota's own?
I'm not aware of any other states that have 3 delivery system options. Most are just run through the State Department of Corrections.
Okay.
So, and they provide oversight for everything. You know, some differences in delivery systems that I've seen. So if I'm a CCA county and I'm the director and I feel like our caseloads are too high, I just come to you guys and I convince you guys that, hey, you know, the recommendation is that all my agents have 80 clients on their caseload. Right now, my agents have 120 people on their caseload. You know, I have 5 agents, so we're way too high. And then I would convince you to approve another position. And then the county is somewhat responsible for that position, if that makes sense. So then our budget goes from, for example, if it's 500,000 now to 600,000 the next year because you guys approve that position. Well, those taxes that gets passed directly back to the county. Right now, I need to ask my supervisors for that position and justify it. And what's typically happened is in all the DOC areas, we're running average caseloads of around 115 to 120 clients, which is super high, and it's too high, to be honest. But that's a way of doing things. And when you get to the CPO and CCA delivery systems, their average is around 75 to 80. So they have more agents doing the same work. I don't know if that's necessarily better. I mean, I think our people have adapted to those caseloads and do a wonderful job working with the numbers that they have. Obviously, I think if they had more time to spend supervising people, then you're not just putting out fires, you're meeting with people, you're interacting with them, you're being more proactive, if that makes sense. So. Other questions on that part? On the next slide, I just talk a little bit about what, you know, the state obligation is versus the county obligation. I think we had a little bit of a discussion before, you know, the idea is not that the state will cover 100% of probation services to each county. It's kind of like the state will cover the felony supervision, and then it's kind of up to the county to decide how they want the misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, and juvenile supervised. So, are there questions on that?
So if you have a lot of felony supervision, you're obviously, your officers are busier than if you had a whole bunch of misdemeanor.
Right, kind of and not really. So supervision level, what we do is for every person that's placed on probation with us, so even if it's a misdemeanor, we do a risk needs assessment on them. So if that person is high risk, then we would see them more than if they're low risk. So we're trying to adapt the supervision to their need level. So what we do know is for low risk people, if we do absolutely nothing with them, above 80% of them are going to be successful on probation. So why do we want to waste any resources on those people? For our high risk people, especially our super high risk people, you know, there's only 10 or 15% of them that would be successful if we do nothing with them. So that's where I want my agents focusing their time is, you know, let's do some sort of intervention work to get this person on track so we don't have to deal with them time and time again. Those are our frequent flyers that, you know, are frustrating both law enforcement and taking up all
So
the
the
time.
number of cases doesn't necessarily translate directly into that you're super busy. It depends on the type of cases.
Exactly, yep.
So you gotta dig in a little deeper to see. You might have 100 cases, but if only 30% of them are felony, the rest are misdemeanor, it's a lot different than 80 felony and 20 misdemeanor.
Right, or 30% of them are high risk compared to, you know, 30% of them are low risk. And that's the hard part with the numbers is, you know, we joke about it all the time, you know, sometimes you can have 130 people on your caseload and you kind of have people on the right track and doing the right things and it's going really well, and then court happens the next week and you get 2 or 3 new clients who are super high risk and are taking up, you know, 4 or 5 hours of your next week, and then all of a sudden it's like you can't get some of the basic stuff that you're hoping to get done, so it's just, you know, prioritizing things.
So could you give us an example of a high risk?
A high-risk person, so somebody that, the easiest example probably to relate it to is like somebody who's addicted to drugs or a chronic DWI person. And typically for a DWI person especially to be high risk, they have to have other things going on in their life, like a longer criminal history, probably antisocial peers and associates, possibly some other family type problems. Is that kind of making sense? So lots of our mentally ill people or with, you know, behavioral challenges, you know, take up a lot of our time. And a lot of that is too, and our system doesn't have the funding and structure to support especially the mentally ill people. So we're trying to deal with them through a corrections mentality, which we all know doesn't work. So we're trying to change the corrections mentality to kind of meet people where we're at. And the comment I get frequently is, you know, my agents feel like they're becoming therapists versus probation agents. And my personal feeling on that is that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like everybody's in a different spot at some point in their life, and we want to meet them where they're at and help them move forward. So.
I was gonna ask a similar question, except for I'm surprised to see misdemeanors as far as probation officers. Give me an example of what you would do for a misdemeanor case.
So possibly a misdemeanor theft. The court can put anybody on probation that they want with us. So you might have a misdemeanor shoplifting that they feel they or the county attorney decides would benefit from meeting with a probation officer. Typically they do that just to provide that person with some assistance in getting their life on track. So maybe there's something else going on that's leading to the stealing. You know, something's not right at home. They're stealing because they don't have resources, so they're hoping by getting them on probation that we can connect them with services to get them on the right track so they don't come back. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Are you seeing a huge increase in the mental aspect of this? Is it the caseload increasing?
I feel like we're identifying more people with mental health struggles, yeah, and maybe part of that is more awareness, you know, system-wide, that instead of just focusing on, you know, if you're a DWI person and it's alcohol, that we're focusing on the alcohol. We're taking a deeper look to say, you know, what's driving this behavior? Why are you drinking so much? You know, is it your relationships, or is there something that's not connecting right, or are you dealing with some past trauma that we need to identify and get you connected with supportive services, so.
So what do you do to try find housing for the people that don't have any, that just got out of jail or being put on probation? Because through personal experience with someone, I found no one wants to rent to these people
Yep.
because they haven't proven that they would be a good renter.
Some of the strategies that have worked for us are the agents know quite a few of the people who are renting properties in the local area especially. So they're able to kind of vouch for the person and say, you know, hey, even though this person has this offense, which bad or good, whatever it is, you know, they're working with me. You know, I'll be over there checking on them to make sure there's no drugs, there's no alcohol, that they're following the rules. If there are problems, you know, call us. We'll be there to help you out. So I think that's gone a long way in helping that out. The Department of Corrections over the last few years has really invested a lot of money in housing people coming out of prison, because that's, especially with our native population up in the northeast corner, that's one of the biggest struggles is people are coming out and going to a horrible, a not healthy
Yes.
situation. So can we get them in a place even temporarily to get them connected with services and more programming? And thankfully, I mean, we're starting to build more programming in the area. There's still a long ways to go, but I feel like things are moving in the right direction. We're getting, and I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage, even though I've lived in Hubbard forever. I mean, I've only been the supervisor down here for about 3 years. So getting connected and seeing some of the new services opening up has been kind of nice the last year, so. Moving forward, the capitated rates broke down here, and I mean, that just kind of shows you guys what we're getting, you know, per day, per felony. The juvenile misdemeanor rates listed below that. I did my best to kind of explain how all this stuff fit into the statutes and how it affects probation county, or probation for Hubbard County. Do you guys have any questions on that, or is anything specific you want me to speak to? So as you can see on the last part of this, the funding formula doesn't include pretrial supervision or diversion. So diversion here is run through the county attorney's office. And we just started meeting again with our office, DHS, or Health and Human Services, and the county attorney's office to try to get more kids involved in that program and coordinate who's responsible for what. So that's coming along a long ways. The other thing on here is this pretrial supervision. So lots of times the court will want, you know, you want to be able to let somebody out on bail while because they're not convicted of anything yet, but you want to provide a little bit of supervision. This is a struggle for me because I've talked about our caseload numbers. So it's hard for me to take somebody that hasn't been convicted yet and invest a lot of agent time in supervising that person. So typically we'll get a couple of UAs off them, try to make them in and provide some minimum level of responsibility. I think what the court would like to see in all this is a little bit more structure in that program. And so this would be one of those situations where if the court decided this is where they'd like to go, where I would come back probably with the court or with the county attorney and say, you know, here's where we'd like to go with this program. Here's what I need for funding dollars, that sort of thing. Again, I'm not at that point right now, and we'll see what happens here in the next 6 months with the judiciary and if we need to make any changes or adjustments. So.
Do you get a lot of requests for that, Mark?
Yeah, there's a few. I can't put a number on it. I would say there's probably 3 or 4 cases each week, and a lot of times it's a good reason because they want to be able to let somebody out of jail, and that person may not have the financial resources to, say, even pay like a $200 bail. So if we're able to get them out and maybe they can get back to work, or they're not a danger to society. I mean, it's costing us more after 2 days to have them in jail than out of jail, you know what I mean, for the $200 bail. So if we're able to provide that check and balance, so to speak, and have the person out and doing something more productive, you know, lots of times what we try to do with these people too is if they need a chemical use assessment or things like that, get some of this stuff done ahead of time so when they come back to court, they're ready to move forward with the idea, like, if we could do it in 2 court hearings instead of 4, we're better off.
What's the average length of pretrial supervision?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, we've had people on there anywhere from a couple weeks to, 6, 8 months, depending on, and that's the hard part is, that, if it's for a short term, a month or so, and we can get a person in and kind of stabilize, that's okay. If somebody's 8, 9 months down the road, why isn't the court case moving through the system a little bit faster?
So you could have up to 30 to 50 cases pretrial.
You could, yeah. And in other areas where we utilize pretrial more, for example, in Itasca County, we have a color code system, so everybody that's released on pretrial for a drug or alcohol offense is assigned a color, and they come into our office. And I mean, there's times where we'll be testing, 20 to 25 people a week on that. So,
So have you noticed any uptick in any behaviors after the cannabis was made legal?
I haven't noticed that specifically, any behavior differences or anything.
Did you see in the news the other day that said, I think it was Good Morning America, that the number of Americans that use cannabis daily is higher than alcohol now.
Wow, I'm not
It's literally
surprised.
went,
And, we treat it now that it's legalized, we treat it the same as alcohol. So if somebody's we're testing for it or whatever, the court can impose, the no use condition, which they do, so. But, yeah, it's definitely created another hurdle. And, I mean, personal opinion, again, it's a gateway drug for a lot of other stuff too, so. So I think laid out next is the Hubbard County budget, kind of what we have and what the county's paying for and what the state is paying for. So, do you have any questions? What the state did when the new funding formula came out is they tried to break down the costs of like my salary, my support staff salary, computer support, admin support, that sort of stuff, and get it on the list for everybody, so everybody's paying a little part of that whole deal.
So if you don't come to us for that person that you're requesting, but we will be funding that person to a certain extent, correct?
I would probably come to you guys and update you guys either way if I was doing something. So for example, 6 months ago or 3 months ago, we were able to take a halftime position that I had within the district and reassign that person to Hubbard County.
I remember that.
So that was at no cost to the county because the funding's already in our
Okay.
formula. If we're specifically going to look at adding an agent here to do pretrial or assist with more gross misdemeanor juvenile stuff, I would come back to you guys and say, here's what we have going on, here's the numbers, here's what I'm asking for, what are your thoughts? My hope is that if we're able in the future to move ahead with some sort of drug court or specialty court program, that I'll be able to utilize that person as my pretrial person as well. So kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and then make a more robust pretrial supervision program, in conjunction with the court and the county attorney. So and the idea behind it is I don't want to supervise a ton of people who haven't been convicted of things, but if it allows people to not be sitting in jail and out in the community, and we're able to provide for public safety and allow that person to be in the community, then that's my feeling behind that side of it, so. Any questions on that stuff?
I have a thought is that, of course, we're starting our budget process for next year. So I guess if you're looking at something for next year, you might think about that now.
Okay. I'm hoping I'm looking at something next year, and I'm hoping with, if we're able to start a specialty court within the next year, there's funding dollars attached to that to pay for some of the administrative costs, the setup costs, the agent, that sort of thing. So I'm hoping it'll be somewhat cost neutral for the county or very, very little increase. So, and if that's not going to be the case, obviously I'd be back saying, you know, that we need $80,000, I can get $60,000 through this grant, would you guys be willing to come up with, you know, $20,000 annually to supplement this program and provide these services to the county? So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Just to reiterate what Ted said, if there's, I mean, even 20,000, if you're anticipating, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
We would rather anticipate and the money not be used than for you to come after the budget's done and say, I need this.
Okay, thank you. I'll get working on that, throw some numbers together. What I'm hearing is you really want to hear a
Before
request for
August.
money.
We like to be proactive.
So right now, just on that next slide is just kind of the cost and reimbursement. So right now, Hubbard is reimbursing the state for half of a support staff and one agent salary and fringe benefits and everything like that. That agent is actually split into two agents, so it's Tabitha Schott does my gross misdemeanor supervision, juvenile supervision, so it's half of her position, then half of Kayla Simon's position, who's our newest agent. The reason I split it up like that, and I didn't split it up like that, but the reason Mark Bloomquist split it up like that previously is the newer agents are our lowest priced agent, so that allows us to pass less of the cost on to the county. So that was a very good move on his part. So, and then I kind of just, you know, broke down the money that the county gets each month, and then how the state invoices Hubbard County twice a year. So, any questions on that one?
I appreciate the examples you gave.
Yeah, so as I put my little disclaimer in there, I've gathered even more information since I sent you guys the stuff out last week, because I just had a little bit of time on this. All these are not correct right to the penny, but they're my best guesstimates after talking with the CPO director and everybody else. So if you want to just look at CAS, you can see our felony DOC budgets on there. In CAS, we're doing really well with the way the funding formula worked out. We're actually $140,000 ahead, so we'll be looking at adding another position of some sort over there at some point this year. And then just as an example, you know, you can see the Cass County Probation Office budget. So their total budget was, you know, almost 1.2 million. Of that, the county's paying about $400,000 right now for services. So that is just for gross misdemeanor, juvenile supervision in Cass County. They probably have, again, this is estimates, guesses. There's probably around 450 people on supervision with the Cass County Probation Office. So another thing that talking about historically with county probation offices and county correction act offices, previously the funding was based on how many people you had on supervision. So unlike me, I don't want people who are low risk on supervision, because 80% of them are going to be successful anyhow. If I'm getting funding dollars for having people on probation, I want people on probation. Does that kind of make sense? And it's the same thing right now that I'm struggling with the new funding formula, because it's still looking at people on probation. Best practices tells us if somebody's done great for half their time on probation, that we should discharge them. They don't need any services from us anymore. There's no intervention work being done, so we should discharge that person. But if I keep them on for that full year, that's tied to a lot of dollars and cents for me. And what happened with the previous funding formula is they just did a line in the sand. So anybody that had been discharged earlier that year, we didn't get any money for them. So we're doing what's right, but then we're kind of getting penalized for it. So if I would have kept, say, in Hubbard County, 50 more people on probation at $5 a day for felony for a whole year, that would have been a huge difference to our budget. So it's a struggle one way or another. So, and the point I'm trying to make is previously, if you're a county probation office or a CCA office, you're working for the court, you want more people on probation because it appears you're doing more. And maybe you are, maybe you're not. But are the right people on probation is kind of the point I'm getting to. So I think the advantage of the DOC model is we want people that need help, that are our high-risk people that need to have intervention work done, because for me, having 100 people or 80 people, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Unless they totally screw up the funding formula even more, and then, we have to cut positions, which would be horrible. So hopefully I didn't confuse things more than I answered, but again, a lot of that's just based on experiences here in the last little bit of time with running through these budgets and doing the comp plans.
So like Itasca County, then they levy for the 758,000, right?
They did, and so I talked with Kevin Glass, who's the director over there after that, and their total cost for 2023 was 1.2 million, and so then the next number was 704,000, and they were able to, their levy dollars actually ended up being 557,975. So Itasca County, again, I think they're supervising somewhere around 600 clients on supervision over there in their county probation office. The next example I gave is just Aiken County. They're a Community Corrections Act county. They supervise a few less people than we do here in Hubbard. And I really love this graph, and I wish every single county and entity would use it, because it's super easy to just explain. The total revenue is on there, and the total cost of the county's on there. So, they're in 24, they're projected to be $312,000 or $13,000.
You said they're supervising less people?
What's that?
You said less people are supervising?
Yeah, they have a few less total people on supervision than are in Hubbard County.
I'm just, like your last page in takeaways, Hubbard County's budget's 40,000, Aiken County 313,000. I mean, how's Hubbard County getting by with only 40,000?
You guys have a really good deal worked out with the DOC contract office right here. So.
Plus they're a CCA and we're a DOC.
Yep, so they have complete control. So as you can see on here, their entire budget's just under $1 million.
Okay.
So then they're getting it back about 450,000 or 480, whatever it is, from the state. And then the county's kind of responsible for making up the rest of that.
Another slide, it looked like you're possibly asking for another 15,000 added to the 40.
I think with the funding formula, the way so I'm not asking for it. The funding formula, the way they worked it out is they put it on a 3-year cycle, and the money that's coming into the counties stays the same, so it doesn't adjust. So the fact that we're supervising 50 people more this year than we were previously doesn't change the amount, which I don't think is the greatest plan. I wish it was more reflective of the work you're actually doing, whatever they set as a point of time. And I think they'll get there at some point with the new funding formula stuff. So Hubbard County will continue to get just under $10,000 a month in reimbursement, but then with the cost of living, the money will increase for those positions. So instead of 155,000 or whatever the bill is, I think the next projected one was 165 or 170, and they haven't given us those exact numbers yet. So there'll be a slight increase over the next year. So, and I hope to have those next month.
And they hadn't done anything with this formula for how many years? It was a really long time.
Yeah, I don't know, I've been with the DOC for 17 years, and this is the first time they've ever done anything with it.
CCA model was really getting its teeth kicked in with funding. That was kind of the kicker from the public safety committee meetings at AMC was, the other two models were really taking it short in the funding. So they're trying to equalize this better without hurting the DOC model.
I think what they're trying to do is the state's trying to say that as a county, if you decide to have these extra services, or if you decide to, like Hubbard County, we could have 20 probation officers, so I could have 40 people on each caseload. But the county then is responsible for providing that extra money, if that's what the county decides to do. If the county decides to follow the state model, you know, here, we're giving you 50% of it, and you guys figure out the rest. But yeah, I agree, like some of the other delivery systems, I think that's, you know, possibly they've got too big, and now they're looking at, oh wait, you know, if we start discharging people early, we have two agents too many, for example, and then what do you do with that, with those positions? A lot of other things that have happened that I've heard of through the CCA model is there's startup money, like we were talking about, if we did a specialty court of some sort. Well, sometimes those get 3 years down the road and they're doing really great. Well, then that money is drying up, and you know that going in, so the county has to kind of have a plan, like, are we going to absorb the cost of $150,000 3 years down the road? Or how are we going to structure that? Or as a way, you know, for example, in Hubbard County, you know, could half the costs be passed on to the county, and can the DOC absorb the other costs? So those will be some discussions as we move forward. Or sometimes the state judicial branch will just agree to fund your program for eternity. So, but that's hard to make happen, but.
So if the Department of Correction had its way and could dictate what model everybody took, what would they, or everybody would take, what would their preference be? Or do they indifferent?
I think the Department of Corrections itself is indifferent, and I think the idea is that the county kind of needs to look at what are the strong points of each program. You know, I'm definitely a dollar and cents type person, so if you can get services for a lot less in one area than another area, and you're getting equal or better services, in my opinion, again, why would you want to do something else? I don't understand counties who, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but I mean, everybody has their own decision to make. And I think at some point, you know, county boards and work groups sit down and, you know, look at numbers. And, you know, if we had somebody come in from that's a CCA director and would talk about that system, you know, perhaps they would say, you know, if Hubbard County were to go CCA, here's what it's going to cost. I guarantee you it's not going to cost Hubbard County $40,000. Because if you look at our budget, you know, it's almost $900,000, I think, for last year. You know, you're getting 450 of that back, so then the counties has 450 to kind of try to figure out where they're going to come up with that.
What's the typical length of an individual on probation, especially, you know, with felony?
So last year, the legislature decided to cap almost all felony offenses at 5 years of probation. So the simple answer would be 5 years for a majority of our clients now. The more honest answer is if those people are doing well, we're looking at getting them discharged at the 3 or 4 year mark. So,
Any programs that have proven to get them off sooner than that?
That's kind of a loaded question. I would say the programming the most success that we see here locally is if we're able to collaborate services between us, treatment providers, whether that's mental health or chemical health, and kind of even health and human services, kind of wrap around that person and get them in a good place and get them connected with supportive services and a job has been huge. So
It's gonna depend a lot on the person too, how
Depends a lot on
motivated
the
they are
person.
to straighten themselves out. And
Yep. And a lot of what we do working with people is, you know, I'm here to help you, but you're driving the bus. You know, so we do the risk assessment. We talk about, here's what I'm seeing in the risk assessment. Is that accurate? So you're trying to build a rapport with a person, right? We want them to come alongside us and understand that I don't want to just lock you back up. In fact, that's way more work for me. I want you to be successful, but what do we need to do to be successful? And with a lot of these people, they don't have a lot of positive influences in their life or people that even are supportive of them. So for them to actually build a trust-based relationship with somebody is a big struggle sometimes. So again, I go back to kind of the therapist mentality. A lot of the initial work we're doing is building that trust and showing them that we're here to support them. You know, if you mess up, there's accountability, there's, you know, you might have to go back to jail, but that's to provide for public safety, and also it's to provide them a chance to get refocused, so.
What's the youngest person that you work with?
I don't know right now. I would be guessing, but I haven't heard Tabitha speak of anybody like super young, like 10 or anything for quite a while, so I don't think there's anybody super young in Hubbard County right now, but I could check if you want and ask
No,
her.
I was just
Yeah.
curious, it's fine.
At Northwest Minnesota Juvenile Center, we've had a 10-year-old in there before. No, I don't believe from Hubbard County, but that's really sad.
And part of that is too, just the lack of other services that are available to provide that child with a safe place to go, you know, it's a same thing with a lot of adults with the mental health struggles. It's like we end up, the system ends up housing them in jail because there's no other safe place to put them, and we know they're not getting a lot of help or services while they're in jail, but you know, whether it's the state or everything costs money, so it just, until there's spots to really help people, it's hard, and you end up putting together these stopgap measures to try to help people. So, the last slide on this, and again, I updated a little bit on the Itasca numbers and stuff, you know, and just using Beltrami County in comparison, they're obviously, I just use them because I like comparing them to Cass. Beltrami County probably has a total of 200 clients more on supervision than Cass with both models. And even still, the cost for Beltrami County is $100,000 less than Cass County for equivalent services. And I'm just trying to show there that the DOC contract model is typically the lowest price model. For, again, in my opinion, I think a lot of the services that the state is pushing us to do are way ahead of what the county models are required. So most of the case planning and stuff, I feel like we're leading the bus on that. A lot of the stuff we're talking about right now, as far as, you know, meeting people where they're at, doing risk assessments. The big push right now is, you know, normative feedback, which is kind of, again, just meeting that person where they're at. And this stuff is driven by the Department of Corrections. And then it's tied directly into the funding mandates. So then the counties kind of have to jump on board at some point to some level. But I feel like being connected with that on the front end, like we're driving the bus and we're a little bit ahead in some of those areas. So, and again, I think I hit on a few of these future funding unknowns already as we're going through here. You know, if they modify the funding formula, if they take away funding for what it's called non-targeted misdemeanor, gross misdemeanors. So there's a list right now of just targeted misdemeanor, gross misdemeanors, and it's about 8 things. One of the things that I've heard in discussions is maybe we shouldn't be providing funding for those other offenses. So if that happens, that would be up to the local judiciary and the county attorney's office to decide, you know, do we want those people on probation? Do we want to pass the cost on to the county, so to speak, for those people if we're not getting funding coming back through the state? So these are some things that maybe you guys will hear, you know, at the state level when you're at some of your meetings. The Council of State Government is the one who's making these recommendations to the legislature. So, secondly, I just highlighted that the county attorney can basically decide what cases should be supervised and not supervised. Then it's up to the court whether they order this or not. So, and I think we talked a little bit about that already, but are there any other questions on cases possibly that you guys have concerns about or things that we should look at?
Well, I would just encourage you to continue working towards a drug court.
Yep. Noted. That's my last point on there too, and I mean, we're working on it, and I told you guys, you know, prior to the meeting, before we came on camera too, that, you know, I've sent an email out to make sure there's still funding available at some point, or what it's looking like over the next year and a half. The county attorney's on board, the defense attorneys, the public defender's office are on board. I know you guys are on board, so it's just a matter of,
And I think from what I've seen even in committees, the community's on board.
I agree. I've had several people, reach out to our office and contact our office, up to and including, people from the press, and it's hard for me to say, we're ready to move forward, but, the judges the judge need here is high right now, and they're struggling to get things done, and, whether they're trying to make a point to the state court, I don't know, saying we need a little bit more help if we want to do this stuff. The chief judge, I've talked with her, she's supportive of us moving forward, so we'll see. We'll continue to push it, and I know it's very important to you guys, and I spent 8 or 9 years doing that, so I believe in the process, and it's a good model of working with clients, so.
Anything else for Mark?
There's a good, if you look on the line, Minnesota Judicial Watch on specialty courts and read it, the data supports it.
Yep.
Without a doubt, the big study they did, I think it was in 2009 or 2012, they did a big study statewide.
The strongest point of the program is if you have a judge who can sit down and relate to the clients just a little bit. Because again, like we talked about before, having that person in authority, kind of approving or disapproving and forming a little bit of a bond with that person is huge. The other biggest benefit, and I'd really advocate for this, and I've already talked with Corey about it, is we need to have law enforcement involved. We need to have law enforcement out seeing these people in the community and doing the random checks. It allows them to get into an area with a person who typically hasn't had very good law enforcement experiences in the past, because they're usually only seeing them when they're in trouble. It allows law enforcement to see the person working on sobriety, being positive, changing their life. So I think some of the biggest comments that I had from law enforcement is how it changed their perspective on people, and that they start to believe that people actually are willing to put in work and can change and can beat addiction. So just, that's a good benefit all the way around.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. If you guys have any other further questions, let me know.
Okay.
I'll get that budget request in really high. Oh, yeah, Kay's there too. Kay. Thank you.
Morning, Kate.
Good morning, Commissioners.
I am here to give an update on investments, and the summary sheet that you should have in front of you is updated through the end of April, April 30. At the end of April 30, you'll see that our trial balance was $28,734,443. Out of that, I'm just gonna go backwards. Cash not available for investments was $4,286,798. What makes that up are other funds that are restricted. Your transit authority, the transit buses from social services, environmental trust, the nursing home, of course. That leaves $6,425,419 cash that we have for cash flow needs. Out of the rest of that, we have invested $18,022,224. And we have the 4 local banks, TrueStar, Northwoods, Northwest, and CNB. And we also have, at the time, CNB investments were $11,642,761. PFM Asset Management, which is the Magic Fund, had $2,136,622, and Ellers, $4,242,841. The investments we have with CNB, we're receiving 4.35 to 5.42 interest. PFM is 4.7 to 5.63. and Ellers is 4.82 to 5.75. All of these are laddered as best we can. What is included in the 11,642,000 in CNB, that also has an agreement we have with the bank, that there's an account that they meet or match the interest rate that is at Magic, and that's roughly 2 million. So there's, well, 2.6 million. The rest of that is all in CDs. So at the end of April, there was 9 $1 million CDs. And at the time, as of April 30th, our total investment earnings, not including investment earnings that we receive from the cash not available for investment, we don't include that. So that's not including the transit funds that are receiving 3.75 to 4% at Magic. So at the end of April, those interest earnings were $275,000 and 153. I don't have all of the numbers for May yet, and May's not done. Otherwise, I would have updated May, and that would look very differently because we have the settlements that we will be doing, and those will be reflected in May. And also paid out in June. So at the end of May, our money market account that is countywide received $41,668 in interest. That was at 4%. And that's because all of the tax revenues that we receive go into that money market account, sorry. And 6 million of that has already been settled, but the rest, 12 million, will be settled at the end of June. And what cash is not settled is just distributed between the county, and that's approximately 15 million. That also includes approximately 2 million in solid waste fees that were brought in, assessments. Since since the account was built up because of those settlements received or tax revenues received, I did go out and bid the 4 local banks, True Star, Northwoods, Northwest, and CNB. And interest rates received from all of them were 3.5% to 5.35. My goal is to maximize interest, so I laddered 5 CDs at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12, and 18 months. All of those are at 5.35%. My intent with the smaller ones is if the cash flow needs are such that we need to put that back into use, then we'll just let it mature, the 3 months, 6 month, 9 month. We'll let it mature and then we'll use it for whatever cash flow needs come up. And that's basically what we do with those CDs at the local banks because they're liquid. And we can put those back into circulation when they mature. But meanwhile, we're maximizing our interest earnings.
The board hasn't talked about this for a while. Is it still the board's desire to have the majority of our investments local?
I believe so.
Not all, but majority.
Yeah. Okay. So currently, or as of today, 16,642,000 is local, and the other, we'll just say almost 6.4 million is not local. So the majority is local.
Okay, the earnings, then, do they just get reinvested, or do they go into the general fund, or?
They are, yes, they go into the general fund. So at Ellers and PFM, those earnings, well, everything goes into the general fund, but those are reinvested.
With 18 million of total investments, I'm just wondering, what would you consider to be a healthy reserve for the county to maintain? Is it the 18 million? Does it need to be more, or does it need to be less? Or is that just right?
Well, I see reserves and cash flow needs kind of, I look at those separately, because we have a good idea of what we need to meet our cash flow needs. The reserves are anything left over that you can invest. And I look ahead, I had conversations with Jeff as to what we would need in the future, because you have a lot of projects going on. You're going out for bonding and the EDA that's coming up, and you're going to need cash flow for that. The 3 and 6 month CDs were done with that in mind, and also looking at what we have laddered. So as long as our cash flow needs are met, I think it's good to invest. As far as it's, well, and these, I'm always looking at local, because if something were to happen and we needed it, we might take a 3-month penalty on interest, but we would have that money within the day. I've never had to do that.
Okay, I was just wondering, how much is gonna be too much to have in reserves? Because I've been in a library organization where they had way too much in reserves. But, yeah, you need to have a healthy amount, but that's, I'm just wondering, what's the healthy
Well,
amount?
our reserve policy is 35 to 50%.
And I think that should probably be revised.
I agree.
A minimum amount should be 42%, because that's 5/12, right? So that gets us from January until when tax receipts come in May. And it's very typical for policy to say minimum of 42, but our range is 50 to 75% of our general operating needs for the year. So we'll actually put some stuff together on that and probably bring a recommendation, but when we get to the financial management plan, it's gonna show the relation between fund balance, debt, and operating cash. And you'll be able to see all that, and we'll be doing that as we're going through the budget process this year. So right now, that number is good. It falls into the 50 to 75% range.
Okay.
And right now, our cash flow is healthy because we just came out of the May 15th tax revenue season. And we received the majority of the year's needs already, which is very interesting to me. The total levy for the whole county is just under 39 million, 38,972,000. That includes the cities, townships, schools within the county, so LaPorte, Nevis, and Park Rapids, HRA, and Headwaters. So 38.9 million. Interestingly, I was looking at how much we've grown, and I'll just go backwards a little bit. So last year was 36.3, 31.8, 29.5, 29.1, 28.2, 27.3, that's 2018. So we've grown. It's not just the county, it's everybody. And it depends on whether they're debt service or they have a special project. Everything is more expensive, as we all have experienced in our personal lives, and everywhere we look, things are expensive. It takes a lot to run the county. Payroll twice, every other Friday is payroll, that's expensive. And paying the bills is expensive. So we just need to make sure that we have cash on hand. But my responsibility is to maximize those interest earnings whenever we can, wherever we can. Even on those funds that aren't available for cash flow, they still may be invested in a restricted account, but we still try to get the best interest rate for those.
Do you make a deposit every day, no matter the time of year, or does it depend on, during tax season you do and other times?
Well, the license center requires us to go to the bank every day because this license center is part owned by the state or run by the state. And so they're taking their cut and we have to make sure we don't fund that account. It's funded by the revenues earned from renewing driver's licenses, so that has to go. Everything is settled by the end of day on Friday for everyone. It used to not be that strict, but we don't want cash left overnight or over the weekend at any location. So we ask that everything is brought in to deposit, and so we go on Friday afternoon. I don't like to advertise that.
I was just thinking, I paid my tax bill, and boy, the next day it was out of my checking account.
Yeah, you take a picture of it and that's how you make your deposit? or-
Well, we're fully staffed,
Oh, okay.
and I have a great team. I have a really great team, and they, my head's spinning a little bit because I was looking at what we received and what we settled versus what we settled last year. And that got me into looking at why the levies have increased. We've settled, we're going to settle by the end of June, $33 million. Well, the total levy was 38.9, 73%. And I find this very interesting. January, February, and March, we brought in about 600,000 in tax revenues. That was very consistent with previous years. And that's dry because all of that is delinquent taxes being paid. And April, we brought in about 6 million, that's very consistent. May was the other 22 million. That's approximately 5 million more than what we brought in last May. So I'm looking at what changed. And I know Sarah had worked a whole day to do an escrow, CoreLogic escrow, and it took her 3 days to post. It's huge. And that was $2 million. And then on May 30, they brought in, we had a $5 million day, first ever. And I believe that was utilities or transmission lines that were paid, and they pay in full. So it really made me dig into what happened and why we're settling so much more than what we did last year and the previous years. But then on the other hand, we're $11 million more than 7 years ago that we're settling.
Anything else for Kay? Thank you, Kay, this was very informational.
Could I add just one other unrelated item? We came through the PNP and we are now reimbursed for that. And we were reimbursed for every penny requested, and that was 47,000. So my time, Marie's, Skylar's, anybody that is just a normal employee, that time was not paid for. So I don't think 47,000 was too bad. And that's county only. That's not other entities that were reimbursed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mary, you're gonna give us an update.
I am.
We like good news.
Yeah. I didn't do a PowerPoint, I figured I'd just put them on slides, and let you know the exciting news of what's happening at Pinecrest. Thanks again to the wonderful work of the county board and the city and of Park Rapids and the school district. We were able to start construction last August, on the Pinecrest Apartments. It is 2 buildings that consist of apartments from studio size to 3-bedroom. And they are in an L shape with the community room in the center.
And the community room or community space allows for the opportunity for residents to gather either together or have family gatherings or some of those things. So because a studio apartment can get kind of small, and having apartment or having friends over is not necessarily conducive to that. So we thought it was really important to add that amenity on to the building. So that upper slide marked 2 shows that particular building is our 28-plex, which is the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And then in the lower corner of the slide, you can see that community room in the center there. I've listed the rents that are there, and you'll notice that we've got under the 1 bedroom, we've got 2 different rent rates. As with many things, construction is a little challenging for the supply of materials. As a result, we had to create different electrical services on the 2 buildings. So the 1 building, which has 30 units, is exclusively studio and 1-bedroom apartments. That one is wired so that the apartments are not individually metered. So the rent there includes everything. So the studios, which are only in that building, are listed at 1 rate. The 1 bedrooms we have in both buildings. So if it's in the building where the electrical is included, the rent is higher than $900, and if it's in the building where the tenant is responsible for the electricity, then it's a lower rate. I put in number 3 there, the location again. It is on a new to be created road on the county website. It's already marked sort of with a line that says Finley Street. We're hoping that by spring, we'll be able to start construction on the actual infrastructure associated with that. As a side note, we have also purchased the 20 acres. We have a purchase agreement for the 20 acres. If you look at the survey drawing, you can see there's an additional 20 acres there. Heartland Lakes has purchased that, and with the expectation that we can leverage the resources that we got from a federal level to build out the roads and get more impact out of those federal resources to additionally buy down the infrastructure costs associated with each of those lots. And then the city will receive additional acreage for a park that makes more sense for this neighborhood, so that they have appropriate space for some outdoor activities for this growing area of the community. I just wanted to provide a quick highlight on the sources and uses. Originally, we were looking at that projected budget of 6.109 million. Right now, our current development cost is about $40,000 higher than that. We have had some moderate change orders, but I also have kept in our contingencies. So I do still expect that our total development costs won't be very much over what we had originally projected, probably $20,000 to $25,000. Considering a $6 million project, I'd say that that's pretty remarkable. So I'm very thrilled with the work that all of our contractors have done and the planning that we've done to stay that close to our original projections for costs. The last couple slides there, number 5, is we do have a website, and those units are available for rent right now. We've gotten so far about a dozen applications that have been approved. We are expecting that we will get the certificate of occupancy on the first building Friday, which means we're intending to move folks in starting probably Monday. And that's the 30-plex, which is the one with the 1 bedrooms and the studios. And then about 30 days from now, the second building will come online. And we're saying the rent or the availability will be August 1st, but we probably will get that certificate of occupancy sometime in July for those. So we've had great response for what we're doing. And our first tenant is a school teacher. So we've got 2 or 3 school teachers in already. We've got a couple people that are working at RDO. So I would say so far, we're hitting the exact niche that we had intended to target with this development. So,
Mary, can you break down the amount of studio and 1 bedroom in the 30 unit?
there's 8 studio apartments, and then the rest are 1 bedrooms.
And then how about the other one?
Oh, you're really testing me. I can tell you, what I can tell you is this, there's 6 3-bedrooms.
Okay,
I think 4 1-bedrooms, and then all the rest are 2-bedrooms. I think there's 4. I know for sure there's 6, and I think there's 4 1-bedrooms in that other apartment. So the development is heavy in 1 and 2 bedrooms. It's really meant to be a location that's either for folks just coming into the community. What we're hoping is that they'll move here, take a job, decide that they really love it, and then by that time we'll have the rest of the single-family owner-occupied development ready, that folks can then take ownership and move on, so.
When you're saying those studios are perfect, good niche, I was thinking back to when I graduated from college and got my first job, and I was single, that studio would have been perfect. I mean, it's a great place to start. Yep.
And we did, we have a tour that will, I hope you are able to come over and see the building. I was told that the cleaners are already in the first building, and so some of it will actually be clean and ready to go. But you'll see that it's really a nice area. It is kind of quiet, but you can walk across the little area about 50 feet and get to Walmart, and Aldi's right there. And so for somebody just starting out, it's really sort of a nice area and developing, hopefully, to be a really nice part of the community, so.
So are these market rate?
Yes, but they are priced below what would be typical market rate, and that is only because of the work that was done here locally with the abatement supports, and then the other work that the county has done through your EDA fund has been able to make those affordable. If you sort of think about it, someone who makes $40,000 annually, 30% of their income, which is really where that is what's considered affordable. So that's really the number that we were looking at. And the reason that that's important is because many of the programs that are available to help subsidize for folks who don't quite make enough money, $40,000 is above a lot of that income, but most of the market rate apartments for a 2-bedroom are significantly higher than $1,000. So it's really tough for, I kind of call them the missing middle. It's the group that makes just a little bit too much to qualify for any kind of assistance, but not enough to qualify for really what's market rate. So this apartment, because of all the local support, is meant to sort of target those folks that are really, working hard, but just can't quite have enough to be what's in market rate apartments. So, yeah. Any other questions? Comments?
Are we touring right after the meeting today?
Yes.
Okay, so if everybody's available, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I did also invite the school district, so I don't know if they will show up or not, but I sent an invitation. The city council is aware of it as well, so this is a very limited tour, but I will tell you that there's still quite a bit of construction work, especially going on in the other building. We'll be able to look at all of them, and all the apartments that you choose to, but just be aware that there are still construction things going on, so.
And what time?
We can go right now.
Okay, and then where do we park?
So to get there, you will turn between the American and the St. Joseph Lear Title Building that's called Career Path. you'll go to the very end and you will hang a left, because that's the only direction you can go. And then park wherever you can. I know that all of the cement work is done, so you should be able to pull up right to the sidewalks that are there. The asphalt is coming tomorrow barring rain, so, and I don't think it would rain very hard, and it's a sandbox, so we shouldn't get too muddy walking across the parking lot, so.
Do you have any of these apartments that are gonna be looked at staged at all? Like they're occupied, furniture, that kind of thing? Just to get that feel,
Well,
as an
we,
example.
we haven't at that point. I think that if our marketing efforts, sort of stagnate, that is really a good option. What we've done sometimes is just asked someone who's already moved in if we could just snap a couple
Sure,
pictures.
yeah.
Because then we don't have to drag the stuff in and over and
Yep.
back. So, that's what we'll do. Alicia, who also works in my office, she is going to be the primary property manager. She's also gonna meet us over there so that both of us will be available to ask questions and kind of give you the lay of the land. As you may or may not know, we do still have a hope that we'll be able to convert 2 units to childcare. We're still working on that. We were hoping to get funded from Minnesota Deed, to help with some of the costs that would make it possible for apartments to be in multifamily units, but they did not select our application. So now we're looking at what Plan B might look like. But we'll point those out when we're over there as well, so.
Would that daycare be available then to everybody or just the people that are in the apartments?
People that are everywhere. The way that we had set up the building is that there's an external exit right next to the 2 apartments that would be converted. So families would get a key card, just like you use here and that we use, and that's what all the apartments are gonna be. That if have a child in that childcare facility, that door would work for you. So you'd be able to use it regardless of whether or not you were in the apartment building or not. Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry, we'll see
You're
you
welcome.
shortly.
All right.
I've been contacted by Janine Larson, the the Northern Dental Access was sold. And she contacted me to come, they're gonna come and do a presentation at the work session, and then she would like to give us a tour. And this dental access is the one that is supported through Prime West for members in our community. So would it be okay with you if Jeff sets up a Tuesday with her, and then we would go to do the tour right after a Tuesday work session?
July work session.
July work
Yeah,
session?
Denise has already contacted her.
Okay, so would that work? Okay, that'd be great. All right, thanks Denise. Is there anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn?
So, well,
Tom moves.